Okay.
All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's rainy February 19th SBCAG board meeting. For the record, my name is David Silva, and I am the vice chair on the SBCAG board. Madam Clerk, could you please facilitate roll call?
Director Perotti.
Here.
Director Patino.
Here.
Director Mosby.
Here.
Director Lee.
Here.
Director Lavanino.
Here.
Director Julian.
Here.
Director Hartman.
Here.
Director Friedman.
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Capps.
Here.
Vice Chair Silva.
Here.
And Chair Nelson is absent.
Great.
Didn't hear my name.
Oh, Director Brown, my apologies.
And Director Brown's here. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next up, we'll move into public comment for items not on today's agenda. Speakers have up to 3 minutes each, with a total of 15 minutes allotted for public comment. Is there any public comment today?
If there are any members of the public on the Zoom webinar who wish to speak, would you please use the raise hand feature and I will call upon you. I do not have any paper request to speak forms, and there are no attendees on Zoom who wish to speak at this time.
Splendid. Moving along, we'll move on to approval of consent calendar. Oh, I'm sorry. First time caller, long time listener. So is there any announcements for the consent calendar at this time?
There are no announcements for the consent calendar.
And did we receive any public comment on any items on the consent calendar?
We do have one hand raised on Zoom, and if there are any other attendees on the Zoom webinar who wish to speak, would you please use the raise hand feature for the consent calendar and we will call upon you. Our first speaker is Barry Remus. If you can please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Silva and board members. My name is Barry Remus, and I'm representing Move Santa Barbara County, and we advocate and educate and encourage for people who walk, bike, and take public transit. Just wanted to make a quick statement in support of consent item number 4F, as in not a freeway. We would like to voice our support for the appropriation of the additional the $100,000 in Measure A funding for Bike Ped and Safe Routes to School project for the Buellton Highway 246 improvements project for bike and pedestrian. This would be a reduction in lane width and addition of bike lanes with buffers and pedestrian safety amenities. And this would bring improved safety to the area, which, as we know, along Highway 246 is a fast-moving corridor by Avenue of the Flags. And this would bring not only increased public safety for improvements for pedestrians, bicyclists, and ADA access, but also economic vitality in making a more welcoming environment that calms traffic and improves the area immensely. So we would certainly want to endorse the support of and support the appropriation and encourage your vote in support of the consent item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Remus. Is there any other public comment at this time?
If there are any other members of the public on the Zoom webinar who wish to speak, would you please use the raise hand feature and I will call upon you. And there are no responses.
Thank you. Would any directors like to pull an item at this time? All right. If not, then I would look for a motion second.
Hartman moves approval of the consent agenda.
Patino, second.
Splendid. If we could have a roll call vote.
Director Perotti.
Aye.
Director Patino.
Aye.
Director Mosby.
Aye.
Director Lee.
Aye.
Director Lavanino.
Aye.
Director Julian.
Aye.
Director Hartman.
Aye.
Director Friedman.
Aye.
Director Brown.
Aye.
Director Clark. Director Clark, I believe I heard an aye. Director Capps.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Silva.
Aye.
And Chair Nelson is absent.
Great. Now moving on to item 5A. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 5A into the record?
Item 5A, expanded intercity passenger rail service, recommended action. 1, approve and authorize the executive director to execute a cooperative funding agreement with the Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo Rail Corridor Agency, LOSAN, with the Ventura County Transportation Commission, VCTC, to provide expanded intercity passenger rail service to be negotiated comparable to the attached for $2,219,240 with SBCAG contributing an amount not to exceed $1,109,620, similar to the attached upon approval by legal counsel. And 2, approve and authorize the executive director to take actions required to implement the agreement per Article 6.
Great, and it looks like we have Whitney Rush to give the presentation.
Yes, good morning, directors. In 2008, voters approved Measure A with a simple promise, a lane and a train. And today, we are closer than we have been in years on finally delivering that train. My name is Whitney Rush. I'm a senior transportation planner in the Multimodal Programs Division. And today, I'm excited to present the next chapter in a story that has had a couple route adjustments, but one that we are genuinely excited to bring to you today about expanded intercity passenger rail service. This presentation very closely mirrors what Director of Multimodal Programs Aaron Bonfilio presented to the South Coast Subregional last week. The Subregional did approve both staff recommendations, and we're excited today to bring this item to the full board. Today's presentation will give a background on the project, we'll give a status update with key benefits, and also seek your authorization for SBCAG's Executive Director to move into a cooperative agreement for this expanded intercity rail service. Cue Lauren. Okay, fantastic. No better place to begin than at the beginning with Measure A. It was passed in 2008 by voters with the goal of bringing increased rail service to the corridor. To reach that end, we would need coordinated effort to expand service, an operational plan, cooperative agreements, and eventually a pilot demonstration. In 2018, SBCAG did launch a morning train, and as you may recall, in 2020, that train was canceled due to COVID and never resumed. Nearly 3 years ago, SBCAG began the careful work to retrace these steps to provide expanded service and restore that service to our community. Lauren. So as a reminder, Measure A is a dedicated South Coast subregional project. When it was passed, it set aside dedicated funding of $25 million over 30 years. This money could be used on things like reducing congestion, alternative to driving on Highway 101, capital and operating costs, and promotions, marketing, and connecting service to make this a full mobility option for our commuters. Next. SBCAG recognizes that this is only possible through sustained and strong partnerships, in particular with VCTC, the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and LOSAN, the Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo Rail Corridor Agency that manages the Pacific Surfliner. VCTC in particular has been a valued partner, and they have agreed to jointly fund this new pilot project, 50-50. Many pieces had to fall into place to make this moment possible, and over the past 6 months, many of them have made this option most feasible and better than all previous iterations. One was the state equipment redeployment. One of the biggest barriers in prior attempts to get this service going was that there just wasn't existing train equipment. Last year, the state redeployed train equipment from Northern California to the LOSAN corridor. And now LOSAN has the capacity to add this additional round-trip service. Additionally, intercity ticket sales from Los Angeles clear through to San Luis Obispo will help offset the cost of this train. Also, while working directly with LOSAN, we have Union Pacific access. In previous attempts of this service, that had been a large barrier, and so by working directly with LOSAN, we have that Union Pacific access. And probably one of the biggest benefits is that significantly reduces SBCAG's insurance risk by leveraging Amtrak's national agreements. And finally, the goals set out by LoSAN are fulfilling a lot of the state rail plan goals for the region. So we're excited that a lot of pieces fell into place in the past 6 months to make this option not only feasible, but the best option possible. So let's get into the details and look at this proposed schedule for the new train. As I mentioned, it will start at Los Angeles Union Station at 5:13 a.m., arrive at Moore Park at 6:31 a.m., and begin its Ventura County pickups. Camarillo, 6:43, Oxnard, 6:57, and Ventura at the very easy-to-remember time of 7:11, Carpinteria, 7:37, and arrive into Santa Barbara just before 8 a.m., and Goleta at 8:11. The train will then continue on to San Luis Obispo, where it will turn around and provide a new midday southbound service. This service can work for tourists, those commuters with flexible schedules, or anyone who wants to get to downtown Los Angeles in time for dinner. However, SBCAG's commute focus will be on the currently existing southbound train 790, highlighted a little bit in red there on the right side. That train currently departs Goleta at 4:25 p.m., Santa Barbara at 4:40, and gets passengers into Ventura at 5:26 p.m. Next slide, Lauren. And to make this schedule a reality, we're asking you to approve SBCAG's executive director to enter into a cooperative agreement with VCTC and LoSAN. Some key elements of that cooperative agreement include a fixed fee agreement of about $2.2 million. Again, split evenly between SBCAG and VCTC, so we would be in at $1.1 million. It's a 12-month service pilot, but it will run 365 days a year. This is not a Monday through Friday train. This does not take off for holidays. It will run 365 days a year. The estimated fare revenues are expected to be around $2.3 million. And commuter tickets and passes will be available, including a subsidized 10-ride pass and monthly pass. We're excited that this cooperative agreement has already been approved by the Ventura County Transportation Commission at their meeting on February 6th and was just approved by the LoSAN board 2 days ago on February 17th. So with this board's approval, it is the last and truly monumental step to make this schedule a reality. And with that, we can look to launch this service in late April or early May. Lauren. And so just as a reminder for all of you today, the two staff recommendations in front of you are to approve and authorize the executive director to execute a cooperative funding agreement with LoSAN and VCTC, and then to approve and authorize the executive director to take actions required to implement the agreement. With that, I thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff at this time?
I do.
Okay. Director Lee, we'll go remote first. Let's go for that, down in Santa Barbara. So Director Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Silva. So the question is, the Ortega-Sy railing on Padero, that project, does it have any effect on this commuter rail approval? Will it delay it or affect it in any way?
As I understand it, no. The Ortega siding project will not have any effect on this train coming online and will not impact the schedule as proposed to us by LoSAN.
Got it. That's my question.
Thank you, Director Lee.
Any further questions down in Santa Barbara? Okay, we'll bring it up here to Santa Maria. Director Patino?
Yes. Could you go back to the slide on the schedule?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I don't see Guadalupe in there. It's not going to stop in Guadalupe?
It is. This doesn't include, there's a lot of stops between Los Angeles Union Station and Moore Park, and a lot of stops between Goleta and San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
We can provide directors with the full schedule, but yes, it will stop in Guadalupe Surf.
Because I don't think the people in Santa Maria even know that they can drive out to Guadalupe to get on the train.
Yeah. That's,
In fact, I was talking to some people yesterday about it because I was at Vandenberg and saying, when you drive take the train, say Guadalupe to Santa Barbara, it's just a beautiful ocean view that you don't get any other way other than the train.
It is so beautiful. And yes, we can definitely look into increasing our efforts, especially to Santa Maria. Again, this is really focused on connecting Ventura County and Santa Barbara County, but more people on the train throughout the corridor is our goal.
Thank you.
Any other questions here? I had a couple I just wanted to know. I was just curious. I know this is a 12-month service pilot program that we're looking at, and that this is being split between the VCTC and SBCAG, get all my acronyms correctly. Will there be a chance after that 12 months to know how many, I think about like there's other agencies that are benefiting from this rail as well. So I think it's going into the San Luis Obispo County and it's going down to LA. Will we be able to know how many, like how those agencies are also participating in this or utilizing this? Because I would think that there might be a discussion about fund sharing after the 12 months, seeing how it might be more agencies who may want to participate in the cost sharing of this if those agencies are also benefiting from this.
Yes, of course, the benefits will extend throughout the corridor. I believe Margie may be able to answer.
Can answer that. I was looking to see if you wanted me to. Well, the goal is to have it state funded from after this pilot project, which is it was in the statewide rail plan to have this route start, but we're starting it a year early. So we're providing subsidy at this time to get it started, but ultimately it's hoped that it will be covered by the statewide budget for rail from San Luis Obispo all the way to San Diego. So that's the goal. But you're right. If that is not achieved, then we will be looking at other agencies possibly participating if we wanted to continue with this service at subsidizing it with our local dollars. But we would have to answer that question probably 6 months before the end of the pilot project. So yes.
Thank you. Oh. Director Brown.
In that same fashion, do you have any partnerships established or proposed with employers that would benefit from this?
Yes, I'm very excited to talk about those opportunities. We recognize that the train won't be a success without that first mile, last mile options. So the things that we're looking to complement the service are free shuttles to and from the train station to employer sites, bicycle lockers at Carpinteria, Santa Barbara, and Goleta, and B-Cycle trials, the bike share system in downtown Santa Barbara. And then as part of getting the word out about the train and all these complementary programs, we're looking to host an employer forum and really engage and really lean on those strong relationships that we have with employers throughout the South Coast. So yes, working with large employers is one of our largest outreach efforts.
It looks like we have a few more questions possibly, oh,
Actually,
okay, perfect.
Vice Chair Silva.
Yes. Okay, go for it. Director Capps.
I just wanted to build on Director Brown's question because that was my nature of questions too. Just again, I applaud the pivot from the original or the first plan to this plan, and I know that the original plan had a lot of outreach with employers, and I just am wanting to hear a bit more on the assurances with the change and sort of this Plan B of those communications. It sounds like they're happening. I just want to hear that fleshed out a bit more to make sure that passengers get on these trains.
Yes, 100%. It is the same outreach. If not, it's been expanded. There is some simplicity in this being a Losan Amtrak Pacific Surfliner train. Before, we are looking at Metrolink in the morning, Amtrak in the afternoon. How do we message this to commuters? This is a lot more digestible for commuters. And we're planning a large employer forum where we will invite all the employers that we have these relationships with to really highlight the benefits of making this a possibility for their employees. We have numerous email lists that we will lean on. We're also developing a program to give $50 train ride passes to employees. And then as they use them, they have the potential to earn additional ones. So yes, we are working with employers throughout the South Coast. We're planning a lot of outreach events, and I'll let Lauren speak to any others that we're planning on.
Why don't you talk about the VCTC effort, which we didn't have in the last, go ahead.
Yes, we're excited with VCTC being such a valuable partner and being even more engaged this time around. We're looking at a lot of events in Ventura County. In previous years, a lot of our efforts focused on Santa Barbara, but of course the commuters live in Ventura and they work here. And so Ventura County is planning on presenting at all their boards, all their commissions, getting out in the farmers markets, meeting with all their employers, so that we're not just targeting targeting the employers here in Santa Barbara and then relying on them to pass the word on. We're really working with VCTC to reach the people in Ventura County that can most benefit from this train. Yes, please, Lauren.
I just wanted to add just one more thing is that it's a coordinated marketing and outreach effort. So it's LoSAN, SBCAG, and VCTC all working together to work on shared resources, both with our collateral materials as well as our outreach. And so those are regular meetings that we are having and instituting. And yes, it is a similar marketing effort that we had planned with the previous service that we're just kind of working with this better and more commuter-friendly opportunity.
Director Hartman.
Last time we did this, that is when we had first inaugurated the train, one of the key concerns was reliability. Would it be on time? And we worked hard to get a bus to pick up the slack when the train wasn't there. What do we anticipate this go-round?
Yes, we recognize that that was one of the largest barriers to the train that launched in 2018 was its reliability. With this service, yes, it does still begin in Los Angeles Union Station, but not only is this service an hour later coming in, the trains surrounding it on the corridor have also adjusted. Before, there was a lot of negotiations that had to happen with freight service, but Union Pacific has adjusted their freight schedules. All the host schedules on the corridor have adjusted so that we are anticipating significantly higher reliability with this morning train coming in the spring.
So that'll be something I think key to communicate.
Yes, and that will be part of one of our hopeful audiences, of course, are those that really love the 2018 train but stopped because of reliability. And we know that question will come up, and we have the assurances from all the host railroads that this one will be significantly more reliable.
All right, before going to public comment, just want to check and make sure there's no one in Santa Barbara with any further questions. Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public on the Zoom webinar who wish to speak, would you please use the raise hand feature and I will call upon you. We did not receive any public comment for this item in advance, and there are no attendees on Zoom who wish to speak.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a possible motion.
Chair, Vice Chair Silva, this is Perotti.
Yes.
Hi. When you're ready for the motion, I'd be honored to make that motion since I sit on the LoSAN board, and I tried to make that motion when the whole board was present, and I will tell you they're all very enthusiastic about this service, and I missed my chance. I guess I was too slow in raising my hand. So.
Well, then we'll do a very slow, dramatic pause so you can make the motion at this time for you, Director Perotti. So would you like to make the motion?
I would. Thank you.
And Hartman seconds, and I just want to say I thought that was a really well-done staff report.
Yes.
Great. If we could have a roll call vote.
Director Perotti?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
Director Mosby?
Aye.
Director Lee?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Friedman?
Aye.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Capps?
Aye.
Director Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair Silva?
Aye.
And Chair Nelson absent. Motion passes.
Yes, thank you to the staff for that presentation, and thank you to Director Perotti for making the motion and making sure that's on the record for that. I look forward to us all becoming ambassadors for the train to make sure that we get people onto that. Moving on, we'll move to item B now in our staff presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, read into the record item 5B, please.
Sustainable Communities Strategy Planning Process and Potential Reform Update Recommended Action. Receive a presentation on the planning process for the Sustainable Communities Strategy and the current efforts to reform the associated law.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Becker.
All right, thank you, Chair and Directors. I'm Mike Becker of staff, and this morning I'm going to provide a presentation on Senate Bill 375, which is the Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act, and how that impacts SBCAG. In 2006, Governor Schwarzenegger signed Assembly Bill 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act, and AB 32 changed California and began a coordinated effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors. Senate Bill 375, or SB 375, followed. The visible or tangible part of SB 375 is the Sustainable Community Strategy, which is included within each regional transportation plan. Today, I'll touch on why the law matters, how it impacts our region, and reform efforts that are underway across the state. So on to why it matters. The original intent of SB 375 was good, though whether or not it has achieved its objectives remains to be seen. And this matters to you for a variety of reasons. When the law first passed, there was no tie to funding. That changed with Senate Bill 1, which now requires a compliant sustainable community strategy to be eligible for certain funding programs. In addition, there's ties between SB 375 and RENA, between SB 375 and CEQA. There are good aspects of the requirements related to SB 375, including planning, land use, and transportation in tandem, though this is good practice with or without that law. I mentioned that AB 32 became law in 2006. AB 32 focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors. SB 375 was passed in 2008, 2 years later, with a focus on light-duty vehicles. So to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles, which I describe as the types of cars or trucks that you or I would drive. Therefore, SB 375 implements one component or one aspect of the much broader AB 32. The California Air Resources Board, by the powers given to them by SB 375, sets greenhouse gas emission reduction targets for each region in California. For SBCAG, our current target is 17% below 2005 levels for target year 2035, and that is on a per capita basis. The target is achieved, or not, through a combination of laying out land use development patterns, as well as the transportation projects and policies included within the regional transportation plan. The per capita point is important to highlight for two reasons primarily, but number one, as a per capita target, greenhouse gas emissions in theory could rise in aggregate and the law still be satisfied. And number two, the per capita aspect enables us to tackle it or address it from two different angles. First, we have an existing population that lives in existing land use development patterns and so forth that we can try to influence their travel behaviors to a more sustainable manner. So that's one way to address the law. The other is to focus on the growing aspect of the region. As we grow, we can grow more sustainably so that that new population has less of a transportation impact compared to the existing population. The law requires us, SBCAG, to lay out a variety of scenarios, and those are combinations of land use development patterns as well as the transportation projects and policies. We take that through a public process, and ultimately this board selects the scenario that is included within the Sustainable Community Strategy and the Regional Transportation Plan is built around. You can expect to do that next in 2028 for our 2029 plan. This is what a jobs housing imbalance looks like on a chart. A few long commutes can outweigh almost all of the short ones. The dark bars are the share of commuters by the distance buckets on the bottom. So the far left is you can see less than a half-mile commute. And then the lighter bars are the resulting vehicle miles from that population. The left side of the chart shows we're doing a great job in terms with a lot of our population. They have short commutes, may use alternative modes of travel, and have little transportation impact. The right side shows the imbalance. When we have a portion of our workforce that we need to import or that has very long commutes, it makes it much more difficult to address the requirements of SB 375. You have the 5% associated with that longest commuting cohort produces the same vehicle miles as the 86% that's included within all but the last two bars. So just that final bar equals 86% of the commuting population. Through our experience, we've developed 4 sustainable community strategies since the law came into effect, and we found that we cannot achieve the requirements of SB 375 without addressing the jobs housing imbalance. The bars on the right are there for a variety of reasons, including the lack and unaffordability of housing. A friend of mine was a founder of a tech company in Goleta. In conversations with him, I've learned that that company, as well as other companies, are founded here, begin to grow here, but then forced to grow elsewhere, which then exports the economic benefit. I do want to transition to some of the challenges that are related with Senate Bill 375. They're divided into 4 categories: land use, economics and politics, population, jobs, and housing, and then finally recognizing that change is slow. Where people live, work, and play creates demands on the transportation system. So therefore, land use is central to understanding travel patterns. The image on this slide shows Levittown, which is among the first post-war suburbs in the United States. And since that was built, we've had about 75 years of building in similar manner. And the vast majority of that housing stock still exists. That type of growth is not conducive to successful transit services. It separates all land uses, so every trip requires a vehicle, and so on. But the point is we have a built environment that produces travel behaviors that are very difficult to change. And I will point out that SB 375 requires us to lay out a land use development pattern for the region. However, SB 375 explicitly gave us no land use authority. When economic development and housing development do not keep pace with one another, problems are created. In our region, that problem is a jobs housing imbalance. The point that I want to make with this slide is on the lower left, and this is related to how I described there's 2 ways to addressing it, either through changing travel patterns or travel behaviors, or by growing in a more sustainable manner. Last week at the subregionals, we presented the draft regional growth forecast, and region-wide or county-wide, we expect the population to grow by about 10% out to 2060. If you said all of that new growth had just half of the transportation impact of the existing population, that would only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or VMT, which is the proxy, by about 2.8%. Our target's 17%. Yeah, and it really highlights that it puts us in this difficult situation where we're challenged to change existing travel behaviors while also not being able to rely heavily on new growth to bring down the per capita aspect. When you walk out of your front door and go somewhere, there's a high likelihood that you're either going to spend money or going to make money. And by definition, that is economic activity. Economic activity is directly related to travel, and SB 375 asks us to push back against that a little bit. The cost of travel may affect travel behaviors. Californians pay about 150% of the national average for gasoline. Yet the last time I was in Los Angeles, the 405 was still packed. There are, when there are not convenient and easy alternatives, people will choose what works for them. And I'd highlight, prior to coming to SBCAG in 2014, I worked for about 8 years for the MPO in the Philadelphia region. I think I drove to work twice. I would walk to the train station, ride the train to the city, walk to my office. What was different? It was quicker to take the train. And it was cheaper because I didn't have to pay $20 a day to park a car in the center city. But it just highlights that transit can be effective when the conditions align. But really the point that I want to make, there's a lot that goes into defining the behaviors of the traveling public that do not come to this board for a decision. Yet SB 375 kind of holds us to account for those decisions, or the lack of decisions. Okay, so SB 375 asks us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles by 2035. The good news is the transportation projects that we have and the land use developments in the region can bend the curve. The bad news is that doesn't happen overnight. Couple rhetorical questions. Director Friedman, there are 2 Macy's sites in the city of Santa Barbara with significant housing developments proposed. It was 3.5 years ago that actually right here in this room, we were talking about a specific plan for one of them. When will the residents move in? Director Hartman, how long have we been trying to get a trail across the San Ynez Valley? Director Patino, the city of Santa Maria is redeveloping its downtown. When will that be complete? We are making progress, but these things are slow. The 101 is almost done. But it was about 20 years ago that the first shovel went into the ground. So we are doing a good job of advancing the projects that support more sustainable travel and travel behaviors, but they do not happen as fast as SB 375 wants. And one other point on this slide that I'd like to make is a lot of the major transportation projects that we advance and the ones that are supportive of sustainable travel require the use of competitive grant funds. Those funding programs are extremely oversubscribed. And for example, the state's active transportation program has roughly a 20% success rate. So AB 32 became law in 2006, SB 32 followed in 2008, and since then there's been a variety of other laws and regulations that came online that are trying to achieve the same objectives as SB 375. And they define how we plan regionally with or without SB 375. For one, the RENA process, how we allocate housing across the region, has a series of 5 statutory objectives that we must follow, we're required to follow. However, they're aligned with SB 375, so we would be allocating consistent with this law, with or without the law. Senate Bill 743 changed the California Environmental Quality Act, the transportation impact aspect of it, to align it with Senate Bill 375. The state was trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by electrifying the vehicle fleet. That's currently on hold, but ultimately it would negate Senate Bill 375. And finally, by way of executive orders, the state has the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, as well as the Caltrans System Investment Strategy, which essentially focus transportation investments consistent with Senate Bill 375. And all these things would happen with or without that law. So on to reform. When Senate Bill 375 first became law, there were 2 target years, 2020 and 2035. 2020 is in the past, 2035 is not too far away. For a variety of other challenges, there are efforts across the state to reform the law. At first, SBCAG partnered with the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, or SLOCOG, the staff there to write a white paper, which is attached to your staff report. The paper lays out many of the issues I spoke of and lays out or suggests a better way forward. But what does that better way forward look like? Essentially, it's moving from an idealistic law to a pragmatic law. We suggest that targets should consider expected population growth, because as I mentioned, there's 2 ways to address the greenhouse gas emissions. We would like to keep the focus on the decisions that this board has the authority to make and not hold us to account for decisions that this board doesn't make. In addition, the state should provide the level of funding necessary to implement a state law and to reduce the heavily quantitative aspects of the law to get more into a softer analysis. And finally, to improve the required collaboration with the California Air Resources Board. So that's the white paper, which is attached. There's also another effort across the state. So the largest 4 MPOs in the state came together to develop a draft proposal. The draft proposal does share some similarities to ours, and much of it would be a benefit. I don't want to say the whole thing would, but much of it would be an improvement. They want to focus more on the implementation. They would like to move from a 4-year to 8-year cycle. And another important component is they want MPOs to be able to take credit for all things that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles. For instance, we get 0 credit for the electrification of the vehicle fleet. which by itself is extremely effective at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the Big Four proposal. So the next steps, in a minute, you'll hear from Gus Corey and see that SB 375 is included in our draft legislative platform, and Gus may have other comments on the law. We will keep you informed of proposals, including if they impact your city council or board of supervisors role. And when there are concrete proposals, we will return to seek your direction on how to address those or to try and influence those. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions from Director Brown, Director Hartman?
Go first.
Thank you for, it's a good report, but I find that some of the, I think we skew the statistics significantly, Solvang particularly, with where we have almost everybody coming in through, we have over 1 million visitors a year. And I promise you, most of them are spending more than an hour on the road to get there. But they're not part of our population or per capita, I guess. So I'm seeing skews in that way, if I understand your statistical model correctly.
Right. Good question, Director Brown. So the chart that I showed was focused just on the journey to work, but we are responsible for most travel is included within the umbrella of SB 375. There are differences, and I can't speak completely on whether or not the trip starts outside of our region or it just passes through our region. Like, for instance, if somebody was coming up from Los Angeles to go visit Solvang, we would probably only be taking credit from essentially the county line at Carpinteria up to Solvang in terms of the miles. But yes, I hear you. And that's actually an interesting point is if you have this law, that's a state law that's asking people to essentially trying to get people to drive less. Yet, we still very actively promote tourism and so forth that encourages people to drive more.
And it's not just Solvang, it's also the casino and many other entities that are inviting Santa Barbara.
So if the tourism to the city of Solvang, the casino, or wherever else the tourists are going in Santa Barbara County continues to grow, it just makes our challenge even harder. Because we're focused on a per capita basis, so that the total number of miles is divided by the population. Population stays stagnant, and the miles grows.
So your proposed solution is a modification of SB 375?
SB 375 is going to change whether we influence it or not. But there's enough motion behind it that it's going to change probably in the current legislative session. Gus can add more to that. But there's a variety of things that we want to do. Like, for instance, there's a lot that impacts travel behavior, like tourism, that there's no question that ever comes to the board that says yes or no. It's happening outside of the purview of SBCAG, yet we are the ones responsible for it. So to kind of focus it more on what this board controls rather than travel behavior in general. And the same goes for land use, that we lay out a regional land use development pattern. We have no land use authority. The cities and the county can do what they please, yet we're kind of held to account for if it doesn't happen.
Through the chair, Director Brown, I think the point that we're trying to make is SBCAG has been doing the spirit of 375 for the last 20 years. I mean, the 101 is an HOV lane. We've been promoting bicycle. We've been promoting regional transit. So we're doing 375 regardless of the law. The law is making it a challenge for me as an executive director of this agency of being able to continue to do those good things when, if we don't meet the target, we as an agency may get punished and not be eligible for funding at the state level because of it. And that's a problem. When as a region, we're not growing, so that per capita, the delta of that change is mathematically impossible to achieve the 17% reduction because we're not growing enough. it's a conundrum, right? So my goal here is to make the law, the spirit of the law, which was good, to balance transportation and housing and funding in one document, which is good, but not punish people for because we have other goals. Reducing greenhouse gases is not your only goal of this agency. It's providing transportation for the traveling public. It's really our goal. So again, I'm trying to, I know we didn't get it really into the nitty gritty, and you don't want to, because this is a very bureaucratic law from my perspective, and working with it is very challenging to achieve the goals like we just achieved in your last item of getting a train started. It's not helping the cause. It may be hurting our cause.
These are unintended consequences. Correct. And our accountability it doesn't reflect our engagement.
Correct. And this bill may make sense in the larger areas where they have more tools and more growth and more incentives for funding different things. It may make more sense in the bigger areas, but for a rural county like ours, semi-rural, it's not working. So somebody has to say, time out here, we need to do something different, and this is our communication of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Hartman?
Yeah, listening to you, it's hard to think of a regional agency in the county that could pull the various entities together. So if you don't do it here, where would you do it? I think that is the conundrum. I just wanted to ask for the regional land use development pattern. If you're working with LAFCO just got a major grant from the Sustainable Agricultural Community, and they have a process to try to figure out where should growth occur around cities and where not, because of environmental or other reasons. So I just wanted to make sure that it's important that we collaborate and have consistency to the extent that we can. So that's the other regional entity that's trying to struggle with this.
And I did, it's actually exciting to hear that they got their grant, because I did contribute to their application. And when I did, I mentioned, if you get funded, please include me in your...
Okay, well, those of us who serve on the board, Director Nelson and I and Director Patino, will carry that message back, but you know now too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Director Mosby?
As an alternate there. I think you guys did a great job with RENA, and I think the complexity of RENA is it just sticks on that top circular layer. And this is a spiraling tornado, so to say, goes down historically through time. And while you're focused on housing, you're missing one of the aspects of the jobs housing imbalance, and that's the jobs. So as an example, in the community of Lompoc, what has happened? Well, land that's zoned PCD, planned commercial development, going to housing. Land that's zoned PP, going to housing. We have recommendations for churches to be torn down for housing. Restaurants torn down for housing, other social halls converting to housing. And the complexity is people at the higher level who don't live in the community, who don't understand the community, are making decisions for the community. Somehow the agricultural protectionism in Lompoc has gotten to the point that housing is an endangered species. Broccoli isn't. But broccoli is treated more importantly than quality housing for the people. But at multi-layers it goes down, people say, well, exasperating those mileage aspects of it is the community of Lompoc. Where over 10,000 people leave the town all the time to go find a job. I think it's well over 60% of the people, if you have a job, you commute for that job. So you said it's difficult for you to get to that answer. We can get there. But I think it's important, which I get chastised for bringing up historical components and how we got where we are. And it's understand the balance that you have to get through, but it needs to be based on not just the top layer. And I'll give you an example. In one step, the county eliminated 7,642 home sites around the city of Lompoc, eliminated 292 acres of light industrial and commercial properties around Lompoc. And then all of a sudden you wonder why a town can't feed itself. And then you get way overly complex and long-term plans that were, this BP zoned land, that was going to bring jobs. But now we're going to build housing and we're going to be the solution. I've been told by South County people they would support workforce housing for us. What does that exasperate the jobs? If it's workforce designed for South County. Now, the other complexity is we don't necessarily get to harvest all the jobs that are at the base, which hits the 135 out here. You go out here and there's an hour wait because we haven't built it. Last year we built 0 homes. Year before that we built 2 homes. We built a number of low-income stuff. So you want to redirect people who don't have jobs to a community that doesn't have jobs. And then you thus exasperate. I mean, it's the way this has to be lifted up. You know, we need to bring the jobs, as you guys did. Thank you for the above moderate component. So we can try to bring that. And this year we should be looking at 350 houses built this year. And we're directing that more towards bringing the people who are working at the base to the community. But I think when you guys mentioned the jobs housing imbalances, also to look at the job component, but also historically, how did communities get designed? If you look at the 58, 59 general plan maps and zoning maps of the community, you'll see the complexity that happened to the community of Lompoc and the Lompoc Valley. And I think I brought it to you guys' attention before, but studies from 1968 said Lompoc by the year 2020 would be 196,000 people. And you wonder what happened? And you wonder why we are where we are and why you have the conundrum of trying to solve the problem. And it is very complicated. And it can't just be on a simple arena without storing the deep analytics of how we got where we are. And you guys are doing a great job. I get it. But remember, it's like I said, in the case of Lompoc, it's a spiraling downward tornado. And it's got us where it is. It's much more complicated than... and I think Director Lavanita brought something up very important about 6 or 7 years ago, and that is the success of RENA. And we do all these studies, do all these analytics, we put something together, and then what happens? Now this time the state's trying to put a few more teeth in it and change rules, but these rules are going to exasperate the problem. They really are, that people can blindly just, convert land how it wants to, in such the way they do, or the states will mandate, or they'll come in and, in our case, land that was zoned BP is now going to have 80 houses on it instead of 350 jobs. How do you guys solve that? Anyhow, thank you.
Any questions down in Santa Barbara for staff? Okay, I just had one. I was just curious. The only piece that I feel like maybe is a blinder, maybe this isn't the appropriate place to do it, but I was wondering, there's no mention about kind of the infrastructure support that we can provide for telecommuting, which I feel like is a position that a lot of solutions are available for shrinking the VMTs. I know that I'm on the high chart. I drive more than 32 miles for my job when I go. And so I just was wondering, is there a means of advocacy about counting a means of decreasing VMTs from providing the infrastructure to provide more telecommuting jobs available? Is that something that's available or that we can advocate for?
Yes. A very good question. So we do take credit for telecommute, and the pandemic, one of the benefits that came out of that is we see much higher levels of telecommuting post-pandemic. And then on the SBCAG side, what can we do to promote that? 2 things. Number one, we have a travel demand management division, the multimodal programs, that works, and that's Whitney, to connect people with sustainable modes of transportation or things that reduce trips. So therefore, working at home. And also started with Margie and then went through planning, and now it's with Project Delivery as the broadband aspect of trying to build out a broadband network that fully enables remote work.
Yeah, thank you. Director Hartman?
I think what Director Mosby says is really important, and I keep thinking, what is SBCAG's role in economic development and job creation? And I wonder if one thing we could do is invite REACH to make a presentation. I'm not sure that all the directors are as involved in that as some of us. And I think they're looking both at SLO County and Santa Barbara County as a whole. And I think it might at least generate some new ideas. So I would put that forward as a recommendation.
Any further questions? Okay. Did we have anyone else presenting on it this time?
Nope. Next is the next item.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item?
Are there any members of the public on the Zoom webinar who wish to speak? Would you please use the raise hand feature and I will call upon you. We did not receive any public comment for this item in advance, and there are no members of the public who wish to speak.
Okay. Seeing no further comments from the board, we'll go. This is just a presentation only, no action, so we will move on to item 5C. Could you please read that into the record?
Item 5C, draft 2026 state and federal legislative platform, recommended actions. 1, receive and file a report from SBCAG's federal lobbyist, Don Gilchrist of Thomas Walters and Associates, Inc. 2, receive and file a report from SBCAG's state lobbyist, Gus Corey of Corey Consulting. 3, approve SBCAG's 2026 federal and state legislative platforms. And 4, authorize the SBCAG executive director to execute any necessary documentation to add SBCAG as a signatory to the California's Federal Surface Transportation Reauthorization Principles.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liana, and good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Lauren Bianchi-Clemen, Director of Government Affairs and Public Information for SBCAG. Today, I'll be presenting the agency's 2026 state and legislative platforms. These definitely guide our advocacy efforts in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. to secure funding and advance policies for high-priority transportation projects and Measure A investments. When major funding decisions are made by the state and federal governments, regions that speak clearly and consistency compete well for those funds. So our platforms are how our cities and the county can coordinate in one regional voice. These platforms are updated annually and contain input from our advisory committees, transit partners, advocates, our legislative advocates, regional associations like the California Association of Council of Governments. I also want to recognize the SBCAG's management team. We meet annually in the fall to kind of set our priorities and look at what the region's needs are. So they really help shape these platforms that are before you today. So before you take action on the platforms, you will hear from our you'll hear about our federal and state outlooks, and they will help provide context for what we're proposing this year. You'll first hear from Don Gilchrist of Thomas Walters and Associates, followed by Gus Corey of Corey Consulting. Also included in your action today is allowing SBCAG to join in the statewide reauthorization principles document or support the state's efforts on that. And that's consistent with SBCAG's reauthorization priorities. This is an important time to do that because Congress is renewing the federal transportation law that funds highways, bridges, transit, and programs nationwide. So that current law expires on September 30th of this year. And so being at that forefront and lending our voice, not just only with our priorities, but with the state is an important path forward. So the draft platforms are attached to your report. It's included a track changes version that documents what's been changed since last year and a clean copy for your consideration. So with that, I'm going to pause and welcome Don Gilchrist to talk about our federal outlook. And then after we can have a discussion on the federal platform and then move on to the state.
Thank you and good morning, Vice Chair Silva and members of the board. Don Gilchrist, I'm president of Thomas Walters and Associates. And I do want to just give you a little bit of an update on the federal legislative situation as you look at the platform. Real briefly, last year was a very interesting year. Surprisingly, there was an incredible number of executive orders that came out of the White House that really shaped things and shook things up. I think that's going to continue this year. Last year, it seems like a distant memory, but H.R. 1, the Budget Reconciliation Act, was signed into law in July, and that has huge impacts for SBCAG. It unfortunately took away some of the opportunities and options for you to pursue renewable energy incentives and things like electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Many of those incentives were repealed in H.R. 1. And then appropriations, always a difficult thing for Congress to do, to get the appropriations bill signed into law. We had that really long shutdown in October and November. So it was a very difficult year. But as of February 3rd, 11 of the 12 bills have been signed into law, including the transportation bill. And that's the one that really counts a lot for you. As part of that, $1.5 million has been signed into law for the Cabrillo project, and this was something that Representative Carbajal worked very hard on. He requested this for SBCAG, and his support was instrumental in that being included. And then, as Lauren said, we are looking for a new reauthorization for the Surface Transportation Program legislation, and last year we started to lobby on that to get ahead of the curve. And so it was a very busy year. If we go to the next slide, I did want to talk a little bit more about the Transportation Appropriations Bill, since that's so important for you. Essentially, this is a compromise. Some of the reductions that President Trump was proposing were included in this legislation. Notably, there was a rescission of funding for the electric vehicle infrastructure program. Also, a really big rescission of funding for high-speed rail projects. But by and large, the cuts that he was proposing were rejected, and the news is generally good for SBCAG. Most of your funding comes through the highway and transit formulas, and they were fully funded, and there's some other opportunities in the legislation for competitive grants. What I wanted to make sure to mention is that this is the final year of the additional funding for transportation programs that was provided by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That is in addition to funding that is enacted through the appropriations process. And so as that comes to an end, that just highlights, again, how important the reauthorization will be as we work through this year. If we go to the next slide, I do want to just talk about that process a little bit. Just first of all, how important this is was demonstrated during that long government shutdown. There was no interruption to the highway program. There was no interruption to the transit program. And that was because of funding that was enacted through the infrastructure law. And that illustrates how important this is for you to provide not only robust funding, but reliable funding. The big challenge, how are we going to pay for it? The Highway Trust Fund will be insolvent by 2028. That's because motor fuels taxes are not keeping up with spending. So that's a big challenge to getting the next surface transportation bill put together. For you, we're really emphasizing increasing the size of the formula programs and suballocating as much of that funding down to your level as possible. And there's a number of other programs that we're working on. The Metropolitan Planning Program is very important for you. Passenger rail, transit, active transportation, all those are part of our lobbying effort. And then there's the broadband component. That was included in the infrastructure law, and we want to see that continue if possible. That's a little bit controversial, but we're hoping that something can be done for that. I think what we're going to see is a House bill come out in the spring, and that's going to give us a lot of help understanding where this is going. Is it going to be a partisan bill that the committee chair puts together, or is he going to keep it a bipartisan process? And then a little bit later, closer to the summer, I think the Senate will show their hand on what they're going to be doing. This slide just gives a summary of the federal platform that's in your packet. We'll just say there's a lot of continuity with the previous year. I think we've updated it in a few places just to account for the status of legislation. But I'm recommending that SBCAG again come to DC, this time in March, with board members and staff to be able to lobby on your federal platform. I think that would be a great time for you to be there. It's going to be an interesting year again, a difficult year with lots of challenges, but I think if you see how the appropriations process in particular came together, it does show that an aggressive advocacy program does make a difference, and some of these things are important enough. We can fight these battles and we can win these battles. So I'll pause there to see if I can respond to any questions you have, but I'm looking forward to working with you throughout the rest of this year.
Thank you very much, ARC Director Hartman.
Why is broadband controversial? Just sort of public-private responsibilities, or does it go deeper?
It's certainly been targeted by the Trump administration. The criticism that they levied was that all this money has been spent and no results have been accomplished. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I don't think it is everything that they're thinking about broadband. It's just the most convenient thing to say. But it is definitely an area where this additional funding that was provided through the infrastructure law isn't necessarily going to be that easy to replicate this time around. Republicans in Congress do have an interest in this, but we've seen that they have been not that excited about going against the White House. So we'll see how this plays out. No one really has a really good feel for how this is going to happen in the area of broadband yet.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand. I mean, I think of freeways and railroads, and there's always been a huge federal investment, government investment, along with private money, if we want to make a difference. So and a lot of the money was never even allocated. It's not like it got rolled out the door. So I'm still puzzled.
I am too.
Any other questions up here in Santa Maria? Any questions down in Santa Barbara? Okay, not seeing that. Thank you very much.
Great. So before we move on to the state, I did want to highlight that we are, now that the 101 is almost done, using this opportunity on our federal platform to raise awareness about the final 4 Measure A projects. So that is one of the big changes that you see in the legislative platform. And one of our big efforts, we're really looking forward to kind of talking about those final 4 projects, giving fact sheets, raising awareness, so that it can help prepare us for the future funding that we'll need on those projects. And any question, and so that's it for the federal platform. So with that, it is my pleasure to invite Gus Corey up to talk about our state outlook.
Good morning, directors. Pleasure to be here. Gus Corey, State Legislative Advocate for SBCAG. Have a very short PowerPoint presentation here. Exciting times in Sacramento, as you would expect. Maybe not as exciting as DC, but just to briefly look at our accomplishments, just to have perspective. And so we talk about the 101 being almost done from the construction side. From the funding side, I think we're done, knock on wood. So just to give some perspective, the hard work that this body did to get Measure A approved, we've leveraged more than 6 times the amount of money that the measure provides in order to make the 101 a reality. And so $916 million has been secured since 2016, $400 million for rail, for SBCAG and LoSAN, including getting the Goleta rail station funded. This was thanks to Director Kern and her leadership and staff, all the great applications that we put in, and our advocacy. We were able to help create some of these programs to make this a reality. So active transportation, there's been less funding, but we've been very successful, over $102 million that's been secured since 2017. So as Director Kern said, we've been throwing the kitchen sink at trying to provide a truly multimodal region. This is, whether or not SB 375 or any other state law was even being contemplated. So Cap and Invest, this was previously monikered as the Cap and Trade program. That was extended. We had a significant role in moving the ball forward on this. Senator Lamone was the author of one of the bills that had the expenditures in there. What they did is there used to be continuous appropriations based on a percentage share for transit and housing. They now made those line items, so it'll be a little bit more challenging. I'll talk about that in a second, but it did retain funding for some affordable housing, sustainable community strategies funding, and then for transit capital and operations. And then the REAP program, this was supplemental funding for you guys to be able to build affordable housing in the region. And so we fought to protect against some of the cuts that Governor Newsom had proposed last year. He wanted to cut about $300 million. We were able to recoup about $250 million of that. So out of a $600 million program, we kept intact 550, and that protected 772 units in the county. Next slide. So opportunities and challenges, $18 billion versus a $2.9 billion general fund deficit. That's the $18 billion is the LAO's estimate. The governor's estimate is 2.9. It's based upon the fact that the LAO factors in, hey, we predict that the stock market's going to go down by 20%. We literally rely on the stock market. It's capital gains, personal income tax, and corporate taxes that fund the general fund. The good news is that we're fairly insulated from that conversation because transportation relies on the gas tax and then vehicle registration fees for the most part. But we get stung anytime that we rely on the general fund. So when there was a surplus a couple years ago and the legislature had approved Senate Bill 125, we got a $53 million formulaic share of a 5.1 statewide pot. We have not received the full balance of that money. And what's happened is it was a general fund obligation. It got moved over into the greenhouse gas reduction fund. The legislature said, hey, we need to fund CAL FIRE. So it created less capacity. So we're still waiting on about $14 million worth of funding to help out with our transit operations and capital needs in the county. And then on air equality, as Mr. Becker's presentation pointed out, just context there. So there has been legislation that was introduced a couple days ago, Senate Bill 1087 by Senator Cabaldon. He represents Yolo County. It's been a one-size-fits-all approach, which has been really frustrating. And Mr. Becker would tell you, and Director Kern would tell you that 87% of the state's population lives in the Big Four MPOs, so Sacramento, San Diego, the SCAG region, and the Bay Area MTC. So that leaves 14 other MPOs having to try to address vehicle miles traveled, where the mission doesn't always befit the practicality of our uniqueness as a region. So if you're able to build more housing, you get dinged because you're creating a new hotspot because there isn't money to have transit-oriented development because they've cut funding for rail or for transit. 40% of our economy, at least along the Central Coast, relies on tourism. When 5 or 99 shut down due to inclement weather, the 101 becomes your only north-south connector in the state, and it's been an evacuation route, as we've seen time and time again. So those conversations need to be factored in. So what the bill currently does right now, it's going to change, I'm sure of it. And we're fortunate that Senator Limon is now the Senate President Pro Tem of the Senate, so we have a strong advocate there. But it delays, it gives SBCAG more time in order to put the sustainable community strategies plans together, which is fine because we get into this redundancy of just doing plan after plan. But then they're trying to fix some money to their endeavor because us coming out of pocket, again, for an unfunded state mandate doesn't seem quite fair. So we're trying to see how that shakes out. So conversations will be ongoing. We'll play a large role in that conversation. And then the gas tax conversion, this has been an ongoing thing. The last time, Senate Bill 1 was sort of a Band-Aid. It was one-time funding at the time where we thought, hey, we can increase the gas tax, have a registration fee, and then we'll convert over to something else. Well, we haven't done that since 2017. And so prior to 2017, the last time that we increased funding for transportation was 1994. So there's some misinformation on the road user charge or VMT fee, however you want to refer to it. And it is a conundrum. It's a dichotomy because the state wants to reduce vehicle miles traveled, yet they're trying to possibly rely on vehicle miles traveled to fund our infrastructure. You're going to wind up having the same problem as the gas tax. It's a declining revenue source because people telecommute more. There are more electric vehicles, although there's such a small segment of the current fleet that's out there. They're about 7%. There's 32 million registered cars in the state. So we need something that's more sustainable. Our suggestion was maybe just converting over to a vehicle registration fee, which already exists. It's progressive. Cars depreciate. You pay less. It's stable, predictable funding. You can have people save money there too. So that's an ongoing conversation that we're happy to engage the board on. And then next slide, please. So our state platform, protect and acquire state funding. A focus of ours is on the broadband piece. So SBCAG was a recipient. It was one-time funding that we received from the feds, where we have a $15 million share. We've received about $4 million. There's about $11 million outstanding that the PUC owes us. So we want to talk to Senator Lamone, Assemblymember Hart, and others about trying to get the full balance of that, to drive down vehicle miles traveled, to provide more accessibility to others, within the region, to work from home, study from home, whatever it is. With the Olympics, I know that we had the picture earlier with SCAG Director Komi Ajise. I know Director Kern's been working with him. So however we can collaborate and looking for resources to help out with logistics and facilitating a successful event, and what we expect to be, a lot of people are going to want to come up this way to see what the Central Coast has to offer. Enhancing transit service is trying to get the full balance of our 125 funding. Expanding passenger rail service, there's a gap in service, really. Losan terminates in San Luis Obispo, and then you've got Cap Corridor and others that terminate in San Jose. So there's about a 153-mile gap. If we clear that gap, you'd probably help encourage mode shift. There's more discretionary riders along the coast. And then addressing climate change, excess revenues. So there was discussion when we passed the Cap and Invest program that because of the market stability, that there would be excess revenues produced through the auctions. If so, we'd like to see that augmented towards transit, whether that's operations and capital, maybe even active transportation, because that's been dwindling, if that's something that the SBCAG wants to pursue. And then House money is REAP was one-time funding. We need more of it, clearly, because otherwise your RENA documents are just a concept that you can't really execute on. So we're looking for some assistance there, and maybe the SB 375 exercise will help provide some clarity on that. So that concludes my report, and I think the trapdoor is going to open if I go longer, so I'll take any questions.
Director Labanino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to go back to the gas tax, because it seems like a lot of concern in the community, and I think a lot of it is there's just because there just gets a lot of misinformation out there right away. So first off, how much per gallon are we paying just in like a state gas tax SB1 attached to it?
So all in, it's adjusted for inflation every single year, we pay 61.2 cents.
And then if we're talking about a VMT or what I like better is your idea of a registration, and I'd like to see how far that idea is, if that's gaining any traction. But is that in lieu of or in addition to the 61 cents that we're paying?
The road user charge or a VMT charge would be in lieu of the gas tax. And so currently it's being tested at 2.5 cents. That was the most recent pilot. And so the gas tax generates about $8.1 billion per year. So that's the nut that they have to kind of crack going forward.
So kind of got to work it backwards a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and I've heard a lot of them why VMT is just kind of a bad tool. It kind of it's a disadvantage to people in rural communities, those types of things. So I like the idea of moving to it. So how would the registration, EVs, they register the same? I don't have one, but they register the same as every other car?
Yeah, so what currently happens is it's called the transportation improvement fee. So it's a tiered flat fee based on the valuation of your vehicle. And so I think it's gone up. It's like $33 if your car is worth less than $5,000, which is about 41% of all cars in the state, believe it or not. And then another 30% are cars that are $25,000 or less. They pay about $66. And so only 3% of cars in the state are worth over $60,000. And so, but cars depreciate, so you pay less. But that revenue source has been going up because it's indexed for inflation. So in 2018, it generated $1.7 billion. It now generates over $2.5 billion. The electric vehicles, it's interesting how those are treated. So in Senate Bill 1, there was a new fee. They pay, in addition to the registration fee, a fee just for electric vehicles. And so there's about $2.5 million, but not all of them pay it. It was cars after 2020. and there were about 700,000 of them in existence before 2020. And so that's about $121 annually that they pay. So I think there's a way to just have all 32 million cars pay. Or if you wanted to do it by driver, I guess you could do that, but it's probably better per vehicle. And then it would reduce the amount if you convert over from what people currently pay from a gas tax and the current registration fee.
Is there anything out there that tells you what the average person pays in gas tax a year? I'm just trying to think of how many gallons I go through and what that would look like on a registration.
So the rough math is, and I'd have to defer to Caltrans or to others, but all we can go off of it was what's published. So the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration publishes the amount that's generated for the gas tax, and then the Energy Commission publishes the amount of gallons. And so the rough estimate is that it's about $291 per driver, and per vehicle, it's about $270 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only I like the registration idea. I mean, theoretically, your gas prices would drop, but then but in lieu of that, you're being hit with this other fee. I'm curious if there's any talk of, the thing is, when you're buying gas, you're buying it once a week or whatever, you spread it out, as opposed to you get this big bill in April and it says, hey, you owe X. I could see that being a problem for people, but I'm sure they're looking at that.
They are, and I think the method of collection, I think, is to be determined, but there's nothing to preclude the legislature from saying, hey, let's collect this monthly. I think that was the intention with the road user charge. That's going to be a little bit trickier. I think just some of the backlash has been, well, it's a privacy concern. People don't really want the transponder, although our cell phones and our cars have GPS. I think it's more overt for some, so legislators haven't wanted to touch that. It is a fairness issue, the rural versus urban dynamic, that kind of a thing. But
so where are we at on this? I mean, like, what's kind of timeliney, or is it just going to fade away and we're going to be paying gas tax?
My fear is that there has been misinformation about the road user charge. Doing nothing is the absolute worst option because we're projected to lose about $5 billion in gas tax revenue over the next decade. So we have to do something. And if we don't do something under this current administration, which I know it's his last year for Governor Newsom, the new governor is not going to want to do this in their first year either. It's going to take a while, and who knows what their priorities are going to be. So, we're happy to come back and give more of a deeper dive, on this. But I think the Road User Task Force has been looking at this for 12 years, and they haven't moved the needle on the conversation. So it's time to look at different alternatives. And we already collect the vehicle registration fee, and it's not something that you really hear much about. And again, cars depreciate, so you wind up paying less, which is kind of the beauty of it. So it's progressive, and there's a way for people to save, especially on the lower end. So it kind of checks the box on affordability. Thanks. Of course.
Director Mosby.
I'd be more apt to support a VMT. I have 8 vehicles that I have, but each vehicle is used for different purposes and different reasons they have it. So you'd be paying an increased DMV charge for registering a vehicle that's parked 6 out of 7 days. It's kind of, I guess you can blame it because somebody has the ability to own more vehicles. It's more fair to burden them than somebody who's actually using the roads and the driving. And like you say, the vehicles are already watched significantly all the way around. So one of the aspects that you didn't put up there, some states are able to build asphalt for significantly less. I think Texas was, a third as much per mile or something? I'm trying to remember my CalCog visit there, but I mean, if you could maybe find ways to call it efficiency or whatever it is, but other states are able to do this and save a significant amount of money by multiple different ways. And that wasn't one of your things, is how can we do it more efficiently? What is their trigger that they're able to do it? I mean, I know a lot of the answer that's there, but people hate to say that, as many times we spend more money studying a problem than fixing the problem. And like you mentioned, sometimes it can take 10 years to get a project up and going. And again, we just sit there and study, or I've seen it when we send people out to study a project, you might have 15 people coming out looking at the white line on the street. But maybe there's ways that we can get more efficient with this and save a significant amount of money.
Yeah, I think the legislature's open. They don't have a good solution, and so they're open. It's just, so far, the road user charge just has not resonated. It hasn't had any traction. So, but doing nothing is absolutely the worst option.
Any questions down in Santa Barbara? Okay.
So just aside from that, Mr. Vice Chair, we look forward to hosting you on March 18th for the Central Coast Coalition Legislative Day. So we go up to Sacramento every single year. We work with Santa Cruz on down to meet with the entire delegation, and we'll meet with the policy committee chairs and such. And so look forward to having a productive day. Thank you so much.
All right, so we talked about the actions before you today. So it's approving the state and federal legislative platforms. We can certainly follow up with some additional opportunities for the board if you want to do a deep dive a little bit more on the road user charge and some things that are happening around there. And then with that, looking to get some authorization from you to sign on to the state federal reauthorization principles, and that's before you.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public on the Zoom webinar who wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature and I will call upon you. We did not receive any public comment for this item in advance, and there are no attendees on Zoom who wish to speak.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a possible motion. Not hearing much discussion, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
I'll move 1 through 4 in today's staff report.
All right, we have a first from Director Hartman. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second from Director Patino. If we could do a roll call vote, please.
Director Perotti?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
Director Mosby?
Aye.
Director Lee?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Friedman?
Aye.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Capps?
Aye.
Director Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair Silva?
Aye.
And Chair Nelson is absent. Motion passes.
Wonderful. We'll now move on to our Executive Director report by Director Kern.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairperson, members of the board. First of all, I want to thank you for approving the Intercity Passenger Rail Service Agreement. This is a major accomplishment for this agency, and I also want to acknowledge the major accomplishment of the multimodal divisional staff. Aaron Bonifilio couldn't make it today. He's in LA for a meeting on the Low Sand Corridor Working Group, so he felt he needed to represent SBCAG down there. But Whitney Rush has been actively involved in the development of the agreements and the negotiations throughout. So I just really want to thank them for all their efforts to get us to this place. It's been a long, frustrating road, but the change in direction just happened a few months ago. And here we are today approving this new agreement and hopefully starting rail service in the next month or so. So thank you for that. I also want to thank Gus and Don for their presentations and their work representing SBCAG at the state and federal level. We have 2 legislative visits coming up, which they mentioned, the first in Sacramento with the Central Coast Coalition, and Vice Chair Silva has volunteered, graciously volunteered to represent SBCAG on that day, so thank you for committing to that trip. And then our DC trip with Chair Nelson, Vice Chair Silva, and Director Rouse will happen as well later this month. CalCog is hosting the Regional Leadership Forum in March as well, and Director Patino is representing SBCAG on this board, so she'll be attending the board meeting as well as attending the conference itself. And then last but not least, Measure A, Citizens Advisory Committee will be meeting on March 4th to review the annual report and an update on the train schedule and from Ventura to Goleta, so it'll be a very full agenda. And March is going to be a very busy month for SBCAG. So with that, I'll pass it over to the chair, Vice Chair. Uh-huh.
Thank you, Chair or Vice Chair and Directors Brandy Ryder. Just for the record, Planning and Modal Deputy for District 5. I just really have only one announcement today. Caltrans recently announced a $25 million Community Cleanup and Employment Pathways Grant. We had 4 awards in District 5 and 1 award here in Santa Barbara County with Guadalupe. Received about $280,000 for a City of Guadalupe beautification project. So we're excited to see a local agency get that funding. And with that, I don't really have any other updates, but I'd be happy to answer any questions of the board.
Do we have any questions? Anyone in Santa Barbara? All right, we're moving right along. Okay. Next up, we will go to our committee meeting report updates. Director Patino, do we have anything from CalCog?
Yes, thank you very much. This is my first meeting, and there was an exploration of establishing a 501c3. Right now it operates with 501c4, and so there was discussion and information on that. We discussed the regional leadership forum, which will be coming up March 9th through 11th. And got an update on the state legislature, which is not, we're talking about a $2.9 billion deficit. We'll see what the May revise says. Then we had a brief discussion on SB 375. Today was much more clarified. Thank you, Mr. Becker, for that. And then they're looking for a vice president nomination, and nobody volunteered, and that's about it. Thank you.
Great, okay. And then we'll go to Director Perotti to provide an update on LoSAN.
Thank you, Vice Chair Silva. Well, the main topic of that meeting was the extended rail service, and it was met with a lot of excitement and positive responses. We also talked a little bit about, we got a briefing on the draft business plan. I was able to get in 2 edits, and it'll come back for a vote next meeting. And the edits were that we would make sure that it was critical to accentuate the critical need for service to continue via state support. So we talked about making sure that that was in there, that the necessary funding from state be provided to ensure we have not have to reduce service and risk losing out on the benefits that this particular service will provide to San Luis, from LA to San Luis Obispo, especially with the Olympics coming. So it does benefit the whole corridor. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Director Patino and Director Perotti, for those reports. We'll now go to any 1-minute reports. Anyone have anything they'd like to? Oh, Dr. Julian?
I do. Three quick items. One is thank you, Caltrans, for that funding. It's very important to us. And then Senator Schiff was here in Guadalupe and other areas, and he helped support the Learning Center in Guadalupe and also the Senior Center. And then lastly, I'd like to thank Lauren and Margie for braving the winter, the snowstorm, the hurricanes to meet with me this morning. So appreciate that update. Okay, thank you.
Director Patino, did you have an update you wanted?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay, perfect.
No, I didn't.
Director Mosby?
Yeah, just want to probably announce we're in Lompoc going to try to put a half-cent asphalt tax on. Me, Mr. Anti-Tax, but we're reaching out, trying to but match what you guys and your success that you did with Measure A. And we have $70 million of deferred maintenance in our town with the PCI. I think we're like 54. I mean, it's just falling and falling. So we have to do something. And I will brag about the successes and the leveraging that you've done with Measure A. Right now, the county's trying to give me Measure A on this for the ballot. I'm like, no, give us something else, right? I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder and stuff. But if any of the directors want to get on board and help support that, it can help me sell this measure. I'd appreciate it.
Director Harmon?
Oh, it's just a question. So is it a special tax or general tax?
Special tax for asphalt, sidewalks, and storm drains.
So that's a supermajority, right?
Yes, 2/3. Like you got 79% that you passed with Measure A, so I think we have a really good chance. When I pulled it out, 80% of the people felt a need to fix the streets in town. It's driven down enough that I think we have a really good chance to do this. I don't trust City Hall with a general tax. We did that already, and they already spent all the money. So,
Thank you very much. Are there any 1-minute reports down in Santa Barbara?
I do, Parodi. I'd just like to report that the 2 roundabouts that are part of the Project Connect are scheduled to open to traffic by the morning of March the 2nd. And I only laugh because I think our phones will start ringing again, but we're doing a massive outreach to help people understand how you navigate, if you've never done a roundabout or a double lane roundabout, how you navigate that. So, but we're looking forward to it finally becoming available. Thank you.
All right, anyone else in Santa Barbara? Okay, well then the next meeting will be March 19th, 2026 in Santa Barbara, and we will adjourn this meeting at this time. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.